Hello, so today in this video, I wanted to show you a few different methods of improving the intelligibility of dialogue when watching TV shows and movies. It's a very common call we get where folks are having a really hard time hearing the details of the dialogue, where the music and the sound effects are all still clearly audible. So there's a handful of things you can do to make that better. Um, so for all this, you need to start by getting into the setup menu. Just hit the setup key on the remote control. And this will pop that menu up. This is on the new RX V6A, but these tips can be used on really any receiver. So you want to start by going into the speaker settings. Now, um, and select configuration. Now, one of the most effective things you can do to improve dialogue is to just have a center channel speaker. That's like a dedicated dialogue speaker that you can use to fine tune how loud your dialogue is. Whereas if you don't have a center speaker, the dialogue is just mushed up with the front channels, and you just don't have as much leverage over it. So yes, get a center channel if you don't already. Um, if you have one, it's helpful to make sure your center speaker is set to small. Um, a large center speaker uh, gets a full range audio signal, like a lot of bass, so that can sometimes serve to sort of muddy up the dialogue and make it a little bit harder to hear. So set center to small, and also you want to make sure its crossover point isn't too low. So 80 hertz is the default. You might try raising that up to 100, 110 hertz, something around that neighborhood. You can then back out of the speaker configuration screen and check the level settings. And you can use this menu to simply raise the volume of the center speaker. So just arrow down to center and arrow right. Just give it a few more decibels and see how it sounds. A couple more things you can do. Just back out to the root menu and then pick sound. And one thing that's actually quite effective is to increase treble and tone control. Um, most human voices obviously are in sort of the mid to high range. So by taking treble and increasing it by a few decibels, maybe decreasing bass by a couple decibels, you can kind of emphasize dialogue a little bit. Next is the surround decoder. This one's actually really neat. If you turn on center spread for Dolby Surround, that basically takes your dialogue and pushes it out to the uh, front, left, and right speakers as well. So instead of the dialogue simply coming from the middle speaker, comes out of all three fronts. So it can make it a little bit easier to hear, a little bit more pronounced over the rest of the soundtrack. Of course, that only works if you are in Dolby Surround mode, which I'll show you later. Um, Next, you could go here into the dialogue menu, and this one is huge, this dialogue level. So what this is like an equalizer adjustment. It takes the frequencies most commonly associated with dialogue and makes them louder. So this is actually effective if you're listening to a soundtrack that's in stereo. It doesn't have a dedicated dialogue channel. This will identify those dialogue frequencies and make them louder. So 3 is the maximum here. I usually set mine at 1 or 2. You can also go in here to the volume settings, and you can try compressing the dynamic range. So the dynamic range is the difference between the loud parts and the soft parts of a movie. And compressing the dynamic range makes the loud things softer and the soft things louder. So, the explosions are quieter and the whispers are louder. Um, Maximum dynamic range is kind of the movie theater experience where, when a bomb goes out off, it's super loud, and when somebody whispers, it's super quiet. Maximum dynamic range is best enjoyed running your theater at a very high volume level. I usually run mine at the standard, which applies a slight compression, but nothing over the top. Um, just to give me a little bit extra clarity when I can't run the volume very high. If you find yourself having to run the volume pretty low, like all the time, you might consider a minimum dynamic range, just to have it compressed as much as possible and have it still be crystal clear at low volumes. Um, that's pretty much it as far as settings go. Um, there are also three DSP modes that you can choose that sort of have baked in dialogue enhancement. Those three are role playing game, sci fi, and drama. So those modes are accessible just by pressing the program left and right keys on the remote control. So you can see kind of in the bottom right corner of the TV, the DSP mode is changing. So we'll stop on role playing game. That's one of them. Uh, and then we have sci-fi there, as well as drama, which is right here. So that's the program left and right keys on the remote. I also mentioned earlier that center spread option, which is engaged only when the Dolby Surround up mixer is engaged. So to turn that on, you just again use the program left right keys and stop when it says DSUR, Dolby Surround. So that's it. Just go forth and make these changes, and crystal clear dialogue is within your reach.